Imagine you are you're staring down this long, just crumbling dungeon corridor.
Right, classic setup.
Exactly. Your torch is flickering, your hit points are,
Yeah.
in the single digits, and you hear these heavy footsteps approaching in the dark.
And you're probably bracing yourself for, what, a goblin with a rusty spear?
Right. You've got your shield up, expecting a standard fantasy monster. But instead, the creature that steps into the light is this otherworldly being, and it's holding a sleek chrome cylinder that hums with terrifying electrical energy.
A total genre clash.
Yeah, completely. Before you can even react, it levels the cylinder at you and fires a searing beam of concentrated plasma.
Boom, your medieval knight just got blasted by a sci-fi laser.
And that clash, that moment where classic fantasy collides with pulpy, weird science fiction, that is exactly the kind of jarring, memorable table experience we are breaking down today. So, welcome back to Into the Megadungeon, our dedicated audio space where we do massive deep dives into tabletop role-playing game lore, modules, and mechanics.
It's great to be back. We've got a lot of ground to cover today.
We really do. This is our 4th deep dive for the channel, and if you were with us last time, we spent hours unpacking the first issue of the Carcass Crawler zine for the old school essential system.
Right, which was all about injecting fresh blood into those decades-old mathematical frameworks.
Exactly. And today our mission is to crack open Carcass Crawler issue 2.
And setting the stage for what issue 2 actually represents is so crucial here, especially for listeners who might be, stepping behind the referee screen for the very first time.
Yeah, because it's not a standard book, right?
No, not at all. It is not a campaign setting. It's not this rigid rule book that you have to adopt wholesale. You really have to think of it as a meticulously engineered modular toolbox.
Crafted by Gavin Norman at Necrotic Gnome, right?
Exactly. Every single piece of content inside, from the new ancestries to the alternative math for carrying gear, it's all built to plug directly into any classic, basic, or expert-style fantasy game.
And it does that without breaking the underlying statistical balance, which is huge.
It is. So we're going to extract the mechanisms that drive these new additions so you can understand why they work and, well, more importantly, how you can leverage them to fundamentally change the way you run your game.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if you want to understand how a game changes, you really have to look at the lens through which the player interacts with the world, which is the character sheet.
Right, the absolute foundation of the game.
Yeah, and issue 2 immediately tackles the elf. In standard old school play, the elf is often treated as a monolith, right? You are a fighter who can also cast arcane spells, and that's kind of the end of the narrative.
It's a very rigid archetype.
It really is. But this zine takes inspiration from classic fantasy literature by fracturing the concept of the elf into distinct, highly specialized kindreds. And the very first one it introduces is the Phase Elf.
Oh, the Phase Elves are fascinating. Just visually, they are striking.
Yeah, they have naturally violet or silver hair, but the defining feature is absolutely their eyes. They possess absolutely no pupils or irises.
Right, a Phase Elf's eyes are either entirely solidly white or just pitch black.
It's super creepy, honestly, and the lore subtly implies they are refugees from some unmentionable alternate dimension.
Which is great flavor. But that visual distinction of the eye color, it's not just flavor text. It is a brilliant piece of mechanical signaling.
The signaling to the rest of the table, you mean?
Exactly. It broadcasts the Phase Elf's core gameplay loop to everyone at the table. Yeah. Because they operate on a dual persona mechanic.
Meaning they literally shift between two completely different class paradigms depending on their dimensional phase, right?
Yes. So when their eyes are black, they are essentially a martial warrior. They can wear heavy armor, swing long swords, stand on the front lines, take hits.
Like a standard fighter.
Like...
But then, when they shift and their eyes turn white, that martial capability just vanishes.
Completely vanishes. They become a dedicated arcane magic user. They are restricted in their armor, but suddenly they are capable of reading spellbooks and casting magic.
So they are two distinct archetypes, sharing one physiological form.
Right, which actually solves a massive historical problem in old-school game design, which is the multi-classing dilemma.
Oh, yeah. Multi-classing is always a headache.
It is. Traditionally, balancing a character who can both fight and cast spells is incredibly difficult. They either become, too weak at both to be useful, or they completely overshadow the dedicated fighters and magic users in the party.
All right, I actually need to stop you there and push back on that a bit.
Sure, go ahead.
Because looking at this design, my immediate reaction is that the Phase Elf falls directly into that latter category of overshadowing everyone.
You think they're overpowered?
I mean, if you have a player at your table who possesses the full toolkit of a frontline fighter and the full toolkit of a wizard, aren't they just going to completely dominate the spotlight?
It's a fair point.
Like, the dedicated fighter player is going to feel obsolete the moment the phase elf pulls out a sword, and the dedicated magic user is going to feel redundant when the phase elf starts throwing sleep spells around.
Right, yeah. That is the most common and honestly the most valid initial concern when you read the mechanic. But the mathematical balancing act happening under the hood here is rigorous. Let's look at their survivability first.
Okay, how does the health work?
They do not get two separate pools of health. You don't have like 20 hit points as a fighter and then another 15 hidden away for your wizard persona.
Oh, really? They share a single pool.
Yes, a single unified pool of hit points. When you calculate their health, you roll the hit dice for both the martial class and the arcane class, add those two numbers together, and then divide by 2.
Ah, okay. So you are averaging their vitality.
Exactly. They will never be as robust as a pure fighter rolling straight 8-sided dice.
But they won't be as fragile as a pure wizard rolling 4-sided dice either.
Precisely. It's a perfect middle ground. But the true limiting factor, the real mechanic that keeps them from breaking your campaign, is how they handle experience points.
XP tracking. How does that work with two personas?
They do not level up their two personas simultaneously. You have to track their XP on 2 completely separate ledgers.
Wait, really? 2 different XP totals?
2 totals. At the end of an adventure, when you are handing out treasure and XP, the referee divides it based on which persona the phase elf was actively using during those encounters.
Let me make sure I'm getting this. So if I spend an entire dungeon crawl with my eyes black, swinging a mace and taking hits for the party, my martial persona gains all the experience from that session.
Correct.
And my arcane persona, the one with the white eyes, learns absolutely nothing and stays completely stagnant.
Yes, it gets 0 XP. And this creates a really profound strategic dilemma for the player.
I can imagine. It's almost analogous to double majoring into incredibly difficult university degrees at the exact same time.
That's a great way to put it. You have a wider safety net of skills, but it is going to take you significantly longer to graduate.
But wait, if they are splitting their XP, doesn't that mean they are going to fall disastrously behind the rest of the party?
Not necessarily.
But if the pure fighter is level 4, the phase elf might only be level 2 in both of their classes. And in an old school system where a single trap can deal massive damage, a level 2 character in a level 4 dungeon is a total liability.
You'd think so, but you have to factor in the specific mathematics of old school XP progression.
Okay, lay the math on me.
It is not a linear curve. It operates on a doubling curve.
Meaning what exactly?
For example, a standard fighter might need 2,000 XP to reach level 2, 4,000 to reach level 3, and 8,000 to reach level 4.
Right, it jumps up drastically.
Right, because the requirements double at every step. A character who splits their XP evenly won't actually be half the level of their peers.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
Yeah, they will generally only lag behind by a single level.
Ah, okay. Because by the time the pure fighter earns that massive 8,000 XP chunk to hit level 4, the phase elf has earned, what, 4,000 XP for each of their personas?
Exactly, putting both of their personas solidly at level 3.
Wow, that is incredibly elegant math.
Isn't it? It punishes them just enough to keep them from being overpowered without making them mathematically useless.
It forces the player to constantly evaluate the tactical landscape. Like, do they stay in martial form to guarantee they hit the next level before the boss fight?
Or do they switch to arcane form because the party desperately needs a spellcaster right now, even knowing it dilutes their overall progression?
That's such a fun tension to have at the table. And furthermore, their alien physiology grants them one incredibly specific, massive advantage.
Oh, the ghoul immunity, yes.
They are completely immune to the paralyzing touch of ghouls, which, if you haven't run these classic systems, might sound like a minor ribbon ability, just some flavor text.
Oh, but it is not flavor text. In a low-level dungeon crawl, a pack of ghouls is an extinction-level event for a party.
Exactly. A single failed saving throw against their touch means your character is paralyzed. And in these systems, a paralyzed character is usually a dead character within one round.
They will just eat you.
Yeah, they just swarm you. So giving the phase elf immunity to that specific biological hazard really reinforces the narrative that their bodies just do not operate on the same biological laws as everyone else.
It adds incredible tactical utility. When you hear the ghouls coming, the phase elf instantly becomes the designated vanguard.
Get in the front, white eyes, you're up.
Right, exactly. But maybe the alternate dimension narrative clashes with the tone you're trying to set for your specific game.
Sure, if you are running a really gritty, grounded, low fantasy campaign, having dimensional travelers might feel completely out of place.
Yeah, it might ruin the vibe. So the zine accounts for this by offering another option, the Wood Elf.
And the Wood Elf addresses a trope that the standard rules really struggle to emulate. Like, when you tell a new player they can be an elf, a large portion of them are picturing a secretive forest dweller.
They're picturing Legolas, basically.
Right. They envision the wild woodland archer moving silently through the canopy, not the heavily armored noble studying a dusty spellbook in a stone tower.
Mechanically, the Wood Elf reflects a deep, intrinsic connection to the wilderness. They completely abandon arcane magic.
No sleep spells or magic missiles.
One. Instead, they utilize druidic magic.
Which fundamentally alters their role in the party's composition.
Exactly. They aren't throwing fire around. They are manipulating the environment, speaking with animals, and utilizing the terrain to their advantage.
They also get these innate survival skills, like the ability to track prey through difficult terrain and forage for food, which is huge in a survival game.
It saves you from having to track rations so strictly.
And they retain the classic elven ability to spot secret doors, which translates perfectly from dungeon corridors to overgrown forest ruins. You're just spotting hidden paths instead of stone pressure plates.
Right. But having 3 different types of elves available now, the High Elf, the Phase Elf, and the Wood Elf, it introduces a major meta-level problem for game masters.
Option bloat.
Yes, the dreaded option bloat, the kitchen sink problem.
When every single fantasy option is available in every single tavern, the world just loses its distinct cultural and geographical flavor.
A setting where dimensional phase elves and wild wood elves are just drinking together in every mundane human village, well, it feels like a theme park.
It doesn't feel like a lived-in world. It feels like an MMO hub city.
Exactly. But the text actively addresses this, which I appreciate. It encourages the referee to wield a heavy hand in curation.
It explicitly advises that you shouldn't just dump all these options onto the table.
No, you shouldn't. It suggests a scenario where, maybe in your specific homeworld, the wood elf completely replaces the standard elf.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
By making that single editorial decision before the campaign even begins, you immediately signal to your players that they are entering a primal, untamed, low-magic wilderness setting.
You are using character options to establish world building without having to write a 20-page lore document that no one will read anyway.
Exactly. If the only elves in the world are xenophobic druids hiding in the deep woods, the players instantly understand the socio-political landscape of your game.
It does the heavy lifting for you.
Okay, so you have curated your world. Your player sits down and rolls up their wood elf. Now comes the part of the game that notoriously murders the pacing of the evening.
Oh no, the shopping trip?
The pre-game shopping trip. Rolling for starting gold and then consulting massive tables of equipment to buy things piece by piece is just an exercise in accounting fatigue.
It really creates a massive cognitive load before the adventure's even started.
Yeah, you have players with a budget of like 120 gold pieces trying to cross-reference the price of a 10-foot pole, 3 sacks, a tinderbox, and leather armor.
They're literally doing subtraction in the margins of their character sheet for 30 minutes.
It is the exact equivalent of standing in a grocery store aisle, doing mental math to figure out if you can afford both a carton of eggs and a box of cereal.
It's tedious. And it delays the core loop of the game, which is supposed to be exploration and survival.
Fortunately, Issue 2 introduces a quick equipment system that bypasses this accounting nightmare entirely.
And the logic of this quick equipment system is just so sound. If your character is embarking on a life-threatening subterranean expedition, it is assumed they have already procured the bare minimum necessary to not die on the first day.
Right, they aren't complete idiots.
Exactly. Therefore, the system bypasses purchasing the mundane items altogether. Every character, regardless of their class, automatically receives a standardized adventuring pack.
It just hands you the non-negotiables. You get a backpack, a week of preserved rations, a tinderbox for making fire, water skins, and a bundle of torches. Done.
The vital, boring logistical items are simply handled by default. You aren't wasting table time debating whether 3 torches are enough, or if you should shell out the copper to buy 4.
Right. And then, once the mundane survival gear is handled, you move on to the fun stuff. Combat and professional tools.
And instead of managing a budget for those, you just roll on class-specific tables.
I love these tables.
They're great. These tables provide prepackaged, curated kits tailored perfectly to the archetype you are playing.
So if you are playing a fighter, you just roll a 20-sided die, and the table might dictate that you inherit chainmail, a longsword, a shield, and a heavy crossbow.
Or, if you roll a thief, you might get leather armor, a brace of throwing daggers, and a high-quality set of lockpicks.
You condense 30 minutes of agonizing over copper pieces down to literally 2 minutes of dice rolling. It accelerates the table directly to the dungeon entrance.
But the zine's focus on economics doesn't stop at character creation, which is really interesting. It significantly expands the mechanics for interacting with the economy during the campaign.
Specifically when the players return to town.
Right. Yes. Because returning to civilization to sell the massive pile of treasure you just hauled out of a monster's lair shouldn't just be an automated transaction.
Right, the town is supposed to be a living ecosystem. The text provides robust guidelines for dealing with jewelers, money changers, and provisioners.
And the core of this interaction relies on the new optional haggling mechanics.
Which is such a great addition, because in traditional play, if a ruby is listed in the book as worth 500 gold, you walk into a shop, you hand over the ruby, and the GM says, okay, write 500 on your sheet.
It's boring. This zine introduces friction into that exchange. The haggling system utilizes a 2d6 reaction roll, heavily modified by the character's charisma score.
And this is vital because in many old-school systems, charisma is often treated as a dump stat.
Oh, absolutely. It's a number players ignore entirely because it rarely impacts combat.
But this haggling system weaponizes charisma mechanically.
It does. Let's break down the math of that reaction roll. If the party sends their gruff, uncharismatic fighter covered in goblin blood to negotiate with the fancy town jeweler—
Never a good idea.
Right. And they roll poorly, the mechanic states the merchant might only offer 25% of the item's true value.
25%. Taking a 75% loss on a treasure haul is devastating to a party.
It is. Especially since in these systems, accumulating gold is often directly tied to earning experience points. Less gold means less XP.
But conversely, if you send a highly charismatic character who rolls well on that bell curve, they might secure significantly more than the base value.
Which turns the simple act of selling loot into this tense minigame of risk assessment.
Let's say the local village merchant lowballs you, offering only a quarter of what the ruby is worth. The party has to make a strategic choice now.
Do you accept the terrible offer just to get the cash now so you can buy healing potions?
Or do you pack that heavy, valuable ruby back into your bags and risk traveling 3 days through bandit-infested wilderness to reach a major city where you might find a wealthier, more agreeable buyer?
You are generating overland travel encounters organically, simply through economic pressure. It's brilliant GMing advice baked into a mechanic.
And speaking of the difference between a village and a city, the zine formalizes the rules for hiring retainers based on geography, too.
Retainers or hirelings are just essential in old school play.
You absolutely need torchbearers and porters to carry the loot.
But you can't just walk into a mud hut village of 50 people and expect to hire a veteran mercenary in full plate armor.
No, the system dictates that the demographic size of the settlement strictly limits the caliber of the labor pool.
So if you are in a frontier hamlet, the tables dictate you will only find zero-level commoners.
Right, these are just desperate farmers or bored youths willing to carry your lanterns for a few silver pieces.
But they will absolutely flee at the first sign of a ghoul. They are not heroes.
But if the party invests the time and resources to travel to a sprawling metropolis, the talent pool deepens significantly. The tables there allow you to recruit seasoned, leveled adventurers of various classes to join your expedition.
It's basically the difference between hiring a teenager to mow your lawn and hiring a licensed, bonded landscaping architecture firm.
You pay more, but the competency is entirely different.
Exactly. And by tying the quality of retainers to the size of the settlement, the geography of your campaign map becomes a tangible mechanical resource.
Players will actively seek out and protect larger cities because they literally rely on that infrastructure to support their dungeon delving.
It makes the world feel real.
So let's look at the life cycle of an adventure now. You've curated your world, your player rolled a wood elf, used the quick equipment system to gear up in 2 minutes, traveled to the city to hire a competent torchbearer, and haggled for a good price on some anti-venom.
They are ready to go.
They are. They leave the safety of civilization and push deep into an unexplored, humid jungle. Eventually, they hack through the overgrowth and stumble upon the crumbling architecture of a dark, serpentine religion.
They've entered the domain of the snake cult.
Yes. And this bestiary section is just a masterclass in thematic cohesion.
It really is.
Yeah.
Rather than providing a random assortment of disconnected monsters, the author has constructed a complete logical ecology.
Every creature serves a specific purpose within the hierarchy of this ancient religion. So let's start with the base layer of security, the scaled guardians.
The first entity listed is the alabaster serpent, and the design here relies heavily on subverting player expectations.
Yeah, because when players explore a jungle ruin, they expect brightly colored venomous snakes hiding in the vines.
But the alabaster serpent is described as ghostly white with piercing violet eyes, completely lacking any camouflage.
Which is weird, right? Because they aren't wild animals, they are cultivated traps.
Exactly. The cult places them inside locked treasure chests or ceremonial urns and puts them into a state of magical suspended animation.
So a player picks the lock on a chest, fully anticipating a pile of silver, and the moment the lid opens, this white serpent uncoils like a compressed spring.
It's a great jump scare. But the real horror is the mechanical effect of their bite. It isn't just a sudden burst of hit point damage.
No, their venom introduces a degrading biological condition.
If a character fails their saving throw against the venom, they begin to lose points from their agility score, round by round.
Which creates a terrifying compounding cascade of mechanical failures on the character sheet.
Let's walk through what that looked like at the table. In round 1, your agility drops. This means your armor class instantly gets worse, making you easier for other monsters to hit.
And in round 2, your agility drops again, perhaps penalizing your ability to fire your bow or dodge a trap.
It is a literal death spiral. You are watching your character lose their motor functions in real time.
And if that agility score reaches 0, the character succumbs entirely to the venom.
A simple chest trap becomes a ticking clock that forces the entire party to abandon their current objective and desperately scramble for a cure.
Further up the food chain are the hydrals. These are massive, multi-headed snakes sporting bright rainbow-banded scales.
The multiple heads obviously present a huge problem for the party's action economy, as the creature can attack several targets at once.
But the designer attached a brilliant economic hook to the hydral. Their eyes are not organic tissue.
No, they are made of incredibly valuable, high-quality quartz.
This creates a beautiful friction between survival and greed.
It really does. If the party encounters a hydral, their instinct might be to just flee from a highly lethal, multi-headed predator.
But the knowledge that those quartz eyes are worth hundreds of gold pieces, which translates directly to experience points, forces a very stressful risk assessment.
Do we risk our lives? Burn through our healing potions and spend 20 minutes of in-game time carefully butchering this massive snake to harvest the quartz eyes.
Knowing full well that the noise of the battle might attract something even worse.
And that leads directly to the question of what else lives in these ruins. Because the snake cult couldn't rely solely on living reptiles to guard their tombs for centuries.
Living creatures require food and maintenance. The cult needed a self-sustaining security force that thrives in the dark and damp.
They found their solution in weaponized fungus.
The fungal undead. This leans hard into the weird, pulpy body horror that defines the best old-school modules.
It's so gross and so great. The cult took the corpses of their enemies and even their own faithful and inoculated them with parasitic fungal blooms.
The first variant is the mushroom head mummy.
These are corpses literally puppeteered by a massive, garish fungal stalk that has erupted from the skull, completely replacing the brain.
And from a player perspective, encountering a plant-based enemy triggers an immediate ingrained response, right? Use fire.
Oh, absolutely. Throwing a flask of flaming oil is standard operating procedure for dealing with weird dungeon flora.
But the designer anticipates that reflex and weaponizes it against the players.
The fungus is highly reactive to heat. If a mushroom head mummy is struck by fire, it doesn't just burn. It lets out an agonizing, ear-splitting screech.
And the screech inflicts immediate sonic damage to anyone in close proximity, penalizing the very fighters who are trying to hold the front line.
But the sonic damage is secondary to the true threat. That screech is a biological alarm system.
In old-school dungeon crawling, noise is your greatest enemy.
An ear-splitting screech guarantees that the referee is going to immediately roll on the wandering monster tables.
Whatever else is roaming the halls of this tomb has just been given the party's exact coordinates.
It forces players to rethink their default tactics and find ways to dispatch these creatures quietly, which often means engaging them in far more dangerous melee combat.
And if you thought the mushroom heads were problematic, the puffball mummies escalate the horror significantly.
Oh, these are the worst. In the best way.
They really are. These are undead that have become so completely gorged on internal fungal growth that their bodies are swollen, distended balloons of rotting, pressurized flesh.
They're basically walking biological mines, and the mechanical trigger for their threat is simply striking them with a weapon.
The sheer kinetic force of a sword hit causes the swollen corpse to rupture violently, instantly filling the immediate area with a dense, choking spore cloud.
If a character inhales that cloud and fails their resistance roll, the consequences alter the entire trajectory of the campaign.
The fungus literally takes root inside their lungs. It isn't an instant death, which, would just be frustrating.
Right, instant death is boring. Instead, it introduces a 30-day timer.
Over the course of an in-game month, the infected character slowly, painfully transforms into a puffball mummy themselves. The flesh distends, the mind decays.
This means whatever sandbox adventure the players were planning to pursue is immediately put on hold.
The campaign hard pivots to a desperate, ticking clock quest to locate a high-level cleric or a rare botanical cure before their friend turns into a monster.
You generate an entire narrative arc purely from the consequences of a single combat mechanic. It's brilliant.
And orchestrating all of this biological and serpentine horror are the zealots of the cult themselves.
The zine details the zombie snake guards, who are these heavily tattooed undead enforcers mathematically designed to wear down the party's resources.
They have been magically altered with serpentine fangs, but their venom doesn't drain agility like the alabaster serpents.
No. Instead, it inflicts a long-lasting, agonizing pain.
It creates a lingering debuff that stays with the character long after the combat has ended, serving as a constant reminder that they are in a hostile, unforgiving environment.
But the true apex predators of this hierarchy are the priestesses.
They are monstrous amalgams, right?
Yeah.
The upper torso of a human zealot fused to the massive, muscular lower body of a serpent.
Yeah, and they fight with a terrifying duality that attacks the party on two different axes simultaneously.
Physically, they can wrap a character in their coils, slowly crushing the life out of them.
This grapples the character, restricting their movement and taking them completely out of the action economy.
But while they are crushing the fighter, they are projecting a supernatural gaze attack across the room.
If you make eye contact with a priestess, she can enslave your mind.
She can force a party member to turn their weapons against their own allies. A single priestess can lock down your strongest martial character physically while turning your magic user against you psychologically.
It's a devastating combo. Having laid out this entire ecosystem of white serpents, spore-filled mummies, and snake-bodied mind controllers, the zine provides the perfect testing ground.
It gives you their natural habitat in the form of a fully realized mini-dungeon, the Tomb of Ferrath.
And the design of this tomb really highlights how important atmospheric and sensory details are to running a successful game.
A dungeon should not just feel like abstract boxes drawn on a grid.
Exactly. It needs to feel like a physical, oppressive environment with its own architectural logic.
The text provides exactly what the referee needs to paint that picture. It describes heavy, 10-foot-tall ceilings hewn from rough sandstone. The doors are made of thick black wood, fitted with tarnished cold bronze handles shaped like coiled snakes.
The only illumination comes from eerie, flickering blue and green magical flames that cast disorienting shadows.
The air is thick with a pervasive, moldy scent that clings to the character's equipment.
That sensory foundation really grounds the players. But a good dungeon must also be dynamic. It cannot be a static museum waiting patiently for the adventurers to interact with it.
To achieve this, the zine provides a bespoke random happening table specifically tailored for this tomb.
This isn't your standard wandering monster table where rolling a 1 just spawns a goblin.
No, these happenings are environmental and psychological. The party might be standing in a quiet hallway debating which door to open, and suddenly they hear a disembodied, sinister hissing echoing from the dark.
Or they might feel the stone floor subtly shudder as the heavy sandstone ceiling mechanically grinds down exactly 1 inch.
Oh, that grinding ceiling is a masterstroke of design.
It inflicts absolutely 0 hit point damage, but it exerts immense psychological pressure.
It communicates to the players that the tomb itself is a machine, and their presence has caused it to slowly wake up. It builds a claustrophobic urgency that dictates the pacing of the session.
But getting inside to experience that claustrophobia requires solving the entrance puzzle.
Right, the secret door leading into the tomb is called the Blood Entrance, and it demands a profound physical sacrifice before it even reveals its locking mechanism.
To open the way, a character must take a blade, slice open the palm of their own hand, and press their bloody handprints against the rough stone.
And this isn't just narrative flavor. There is a strict mechanical cost attached to this action.
The character who sacrifices their blood suffers a physical penalty to their attack rolls for the remainder of the adventuring day because their primary weapon hand is deeply lacerated.
It is brilliant cost-benefit design. The architecture of the tomb demands sacrifice, perfectly mirroring the grim reality of the cult's religion.
From a table dynamics perspective, the party has to stand outside the door and negotiate. Who is willing to take the mathematical debuff?
Does the fighter take it and risk missing crucial attacks, or does the magic user take it, hoping they won't need to engage in melee?
Once they make that sacrifice and finally breach the tomb, they have to navigate hazards, like the mirrored snake room.
This is a dizzying, disorienting chamber where every square inch of the walls, floor, and ceiling is covered in highly polished, reflective scales.
The scales reflect the party's torchlight in a million confusing, overlapping directions. But the danger is not optical, it is philosophical.
The room possesses a magical aura that tests the fundamental worldview of anyone who enters.
It literally interrogates the character's alignment.
If their moral and cosmic outlook does not align with the chaotic, destructive ethos of the snake cult, the room actively assaults their psyche.
It induces a state of deep confusion, and can even compel a lawful character to drop their weapons and flee the room in sheer terror.
It treats morality as a physical law of the universe that can inflict harm.
Which forces the party to rethink their marching order. You cannot send your lawful good paladin or your strictly principled cleric to scout that room.
You have to rely on the morally ambiguous rogue. All of these trials, the blood door, the mirrored room, the fungal zombies, they culminate in the center of the dungeon, the inner sanctum.
The final trap. It is an incredibly cinematic set piece.
In the center of this massive sandstone chamber sits a smoky glass coffer. Inside the glass, faintly illuminated, are the mummified remains of a truly colossal serpent, presumably the physical avatar of Omfaroth itself.
And piled around this coffer is unimaginable wealth. But if a greedy character gives in to temptation and touches that glass,
the ultimate architectural failsafe is triggered. The entire dungeon shifts from a slow, methodical crawl into a catastrophic collapse sequence.
the pillars crack. The slow grind of the ceiling they heard earlier becomes a deafening roar as the stone roof in every single room of the dungeon begins to plummet downward.
The pacing of the game shifts instantly, becomes a full-on Indiana Jones-style escape sequence.
The players are no longer mapping rooms or checking for secret doors. They're desperately sprinting back through the mirrored room, dodging spore clouds and trying to squeeze through the blood entrance before thousands of tons of sandstone crush them flat.
The Tomb of Omfaroth relies heavily on these environmental hazards. The crushing ceilings, the magical mirrors, the locked doors, and this brings up a larger systemic conversation about how tabletop games handle the concept of traps.
For decades, dealing with traps has been one of the most tedious aspects of dungeon crawling.
It can grind the pacing to an absolute halt if players feel forced to roll dice to check every single 10-foot square floor.
The author clearly understands this frustration. The zine dedicates a substantial section to the philosophy of danger, providing referees with a framework to fix the way traps are adjudicated and experienced at the table.
It starts by reframing what a trap actually represents. A trap is not meant to be a gotcha moment where the referee tricks the players and deals free damage to their character sheets.
Right. A trap is fundamentally an economic puzzle. It is an equation balancing risk against reward, heavily tied to the passage of time.
Exactly. In old-school systems, time is a tangible resource.
Searching a small section of a hallway for a hidden pressure plate or a tripwire takes a specific amount of time, usually a 10-minute turn.
And while the thief is on their hands and knees searching, the torches are burning down, the duration of protective spells is ticking away, and most importantly, the party is lingering in one place making noise.
Which means the referee is rolling dice behind the screen to see if a wandering monster patrol stumbles upon them.
So the player has to make a calculated gamble. Do I spend 10 minutes meticulously checking this locked door, risking a patrol of snake guards finding us, or do I just kick the door open, saving time but risking a poison needle trap in the handle?
It transforms the trap from a random tax on hit points into a meaningful choice about resource management. But for the players to make informed choices, the referee has to provide information.
This is where the zine emphasizes the critical concept of telegraphing.
Telegraphing means you must provide a sensory clue that danger is present before the trap is actually triggered.
If the players walk into a room with a hidden pit of acid, you do not wait for them to fall in. You tell them that as they cross the threshold, their eyes begin to water and they smell a harsh, acrid, chemical odor emanating from the center of the room.
Or if there is a scythe blade built into the wall, you mention a deep, uniform groove cut into the stone floor. Or perhaps a bisected skeleton lying a few feet away.
By providing these clues, you invite the players to interact with the fiction of the world, rather than the mechanics of their character sheet.
The zine strongly argues against the modern habit, where a player simply says, I roll my find trap skill. I get a 16. What do I see?
That reduces the game to pressing a button on a controller.
It completely removes the player's ingenuity from the equation. Instead, the zine encourages players to describe how they physically interact with the environment.
If they smell the acid, a smart player might describe pouring a water skin onto the floor to see if the liquid pools unnaturally or trickles down into a hidden hairline fracture outlining the trapdoor.
Or if they suspect a pressure plate, they don't roll a die. They describe tossing a heavy sack of flour 10 feet ahead of them to see if the weight depresses the stone.
It rewards clever thinking,
Yeah,
but I have to play devil's advocate here. What if the players miss the telegraphing?
that happens.
What if they ignore the smell, step on the plate, and trigger a trap that is mathematically designed to be instantly lethal? Doesn't a sudden, unavoidable death just breed frustration and ruin the social contract of the table?
We have to view that lethality through the lens of the specific genre we are discussing.
Fair point.
Old school rules-like gaming inherently embraces a high degree of mortality. Death is a constant looming threat, which is precisely what makes surviving a dungeon feel like a genuine achievement rather than a scripted victory.
However, the zine also acknowledges that instant death is a blunt instrument.
Yes, it suggests that referees utilize non-lethal traps to shift the narrative state of the game rather than just ending it.
Instead of a spike pit that impales the party and forces them to roll new characters, what does a narrative-shifting trap look like?
Consider a hidden net trap. The player steps on the plate, the ceiling opens, and a heavy-weighted net scoops the entire party up, leaving them dangling helplessly 15 feet in the air.
That immediately changes the scene. The game isn't over, but the context has shifted dramatically.
Now, the players are desperately trying to figure out how to cut themselves free, knowing that whatever intelligent monsters set that trap will be arriving shortly to interrogate or capture them.
It sparks a new, highly tense encounter.
Furthermore, the zine offers a fantastic atmospheric rule for dealing with ancient, degrading mechanisms. Not every trap in a 1,000-year-old tomb should function perfectly.
If a player steps on a trigger, the referee should roll a die to see if the trap simply fails due to rust and age.
But if it fails, the referee shouldn't just say, nothing happens.
Never say nothing happens. The zine advises the referee to describe the physical sensation of the failure.
The player steps on the flagstone, feels it sink half an inch under their boot, and hears a loud, metallic C-L-A-C-K echo from inside the walls.
Followed by absolute silence.
The tension that creates at the table is incredible. The players will completely freeze.
They won't know if the trap is delayed and stepping off the plate will trigger it, or if they should dive for cover. It weaponizes paranoia.
It really does. And speaking of shifting the context of the game, Issue 2 takes a massive, unexpected turn in its final section.
We have spent the last hour discussing sandstone tombs, mummies, and rusty blades, the bread and butter of traditional fantasy. But the zine asks a wildly disruptive question.
What if your players dig deep enough into the bedrock of your fantasy world, and they uncover a vault containing something that fundamentally violates the technological rules of the setting?
It introduces a fully realized, mathematically balanced system for futuristic sci-fi energy weapons.
We are talking about literal firearms. The zine provides mechanics for ion, plasma, and laser technology fashioned into both melee blades and rifles.
It's a direct homage to the weird fantasy origins of the tabletop hobby in the 1970s, where it wasn't uncommon to find a crashed, irradiated spaceship buried beneath a medieval wizard's tower.
Mechanically, these energy weapons serve as incredibly potent equivalents to high-level magic items.
In a classic game, if you encounter a wraith or a gargoyle, normal steel weapons bounce off them. You need an enchanted +2 sword to inflict damage.
The zine posits that a blast of superheated plasma disrupts the physical structure of a monster just as effectively as an enchantment.
But giving players access to plasma rifles in a game about swords could easily shatter the balance.
To prevent this, the weapons are constrained by a massive logistical limitation. They do not operate on magic, They operate on physics. They require power cells.
You have to track your ammunition in the form of high-tech batteries.
The zine outlines different tiers of power. Electric cells hold a modest charge and deplete quickly. Fusion cells provide more sustained output.
And there are rumors of the Void Cell, an artifact-level battery that taps into cosmic energy for near-infinite power. But the moment that battery is drained,
The moment the power cell dies, that devastating plasma rifle immediately ceases to be a legendary weapon of light and heat. It becomes a heavy, ergonomically awkward club made of dead metal.
it forces the players into extreme resource management. Do you waste a precious plasma charge on a goblin, or do you save the battery for the dragon?
The zine also introduces a tactical option that fantasy games often lack: the ability to set these energy weapons to stun.
In a standard fantasy game, if you want to capture a guard alive to interrogate them, it is surprisingly difficult to do so when your only tools are broadswords and fireballs.
Setting a laser rifle to stun means the weapon inflicts 0 physical hit point damage.
However, if the beam strikes a living target, that creature must make a saving throw against paralysis.
If they fail, their nervous system is overwhelmed, and they are knocked unconscious for several minutes. It provides the party with a clean, non-lethal tactical solution.
But the most entertaining mechanic in this section deals with the reality of the interface.
Put yourself in the shoes of a low-tech fantasy character. You have spent your entire life swinging axes, riding horses, and reading parchment. You pry open a steel crate and pull out a laser rifle.
There is no trigger like a crossbow. There is no bowstring. There are only smooth composite materials, strange buttons, and glowing LED lights. The interface is completely alien.
The rules dictate that when a fantasy character attempts to fire an energy weapon for the first time, the referee must ask for an intelligence check to see if they can comprehend the ergonomics.
If they fail the check, they simply can't figure out the safety mechanism and the gun doesn't fire.
But if they roll a natural 1, if they fail spectacularly, the results are disastrous.
The character manages to activate the firing sequence while looking down the barrel or pressing the emitter against their leg and accidentally blasts themselves with plasma.
It perfectly captures the dangerous pulp fantasy tone of mixing medieval knights with advanced technology.
Which brings us to a very practical mathematical hurdle. We have established that your party is hauling around standard adventuring packs, rations, torches, heavily armored phase elves, harvested quartz snake eyes, and now bulky metal laser rifles.
How does a player track the physical weight of all this gear without bringing the game to a grinding halt to do complex arithmetic?
This is perhaps the most universally applicable tool in the entire zine. Issue 2 introduces an alternative item-based encumbrance system.
If you have ever played a game where you had to calculate whether a rope weighed 50 coins or 60 coins, and then add up 40 different items to see if your character was moving 10 feet slower, you know how exhausting that accounting is.
Traditional encumbrance systems rely on abstract weight values, usually measured in coins. It demands a level of mathematical bookkeeping that drains the energy from the table, especially late in a session.
The zine's alternative completely discards the concept of calculating weight in coin values. Instead, it measures cognitive and physical load by counting significant items as simple integers.
It is brilliantly simple. A normal-sized object that you can comfortably hold and wield in one hand, a longsword, a lantern, a single power cell, is counted simply as one item.
A heavy, bulky object that requires 2 hands to manage, a 10-foot pole arm, a massive treasure chest, or a plasma rifle is counted as 2 items.
You are no longer adding 3-digit numbers, you are counting to 10.
Furthermore, the system asks you to categorize where the item is physically located on your character. It splits your inventory into 2 columns: equipped and packed.
This distinction is crucial. Equipped items are the things you are actively using, wearing, or keeping immediately accessible. This includes the chainmail on your back, the shield strapped to your forearm, the sword in your hand, and perhaps a healing potion on your belt.
Packed items are everything shoved blindly into your canvas backpack: your rations, your spare rope, your sleeping roll.
You simply count how many equipped items you have and how many packed items you have. The system provides a very small, easy-to-read chart.
If your total in either of those columns crosses a specific threshold, your character's movement speed drops and they become burdened.
It creates a system akin to inventory management in a survival horror video game. It forces the player to make meaningful spatial choices.
You have limited slots for heavy items. Do you drop your shield so you have enough equipped slots to carry the laser rifle at the ready?
Do you abandon your rations so you have enough pack slots to haul out the massive quartz snake eyes?
It abstracts the physical reality just enough to make it perfectly playable.
You don't need a spreadsheet to know that the plasma rifle weighs exactly 12 pounds. You just look at your sheet, see that it occupies a heavy slot in your hands, and make a tactical decision.
It streamlines the math, eliminates the cognitive fatigue, and keeps the player's focus exactly where it belongs, on surviving the dungeon, not balancing a ledger.
It is a profound example of elegant design. It respects the limited time you have at the table while still strictly enforcing the resource management and logistical constraints that make old-school dungeon crawling so tense and compelling.
You still have to make hard choices about what you can physically carry, but the mechanism for making those choices is frictionless.
And that frictionless integration is the perfect summary of what Gavin Norman has achieved here. We have reached the end of our deep dive into Carcass Crawler Issue 2, and the brilliance of this toolbox is how successfully it acts as a bridge across eras of game design.
It takes the deeply classic, unforgiving, high-lethality ethos of 1970s and 80s dungeon crawling, and it refines it with incredibly streamlined, modern, mechanical sensibilities.
It gives you the quick equipment tables and the slot-based encumbrance to speed up play, while simultaneously injecting this wild, weird fantasy sci-fi element to completely subvert the expectations of veteran players who think they have seen every fantasy trope.
It proves definitively that playing an old-school game does not mean you are locked into clunky math or stagnant Polkin derivative settings. The framework is incredibly robust, capable of supporting dimensional elves, fungal biology, and plasma physics simultaneously.
And as we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final scenario to mull over regarding that specific blend of genre.
Oh, this is a fun one. Imagine your party survives the grinding ceilings of the Tomb of Omfereth. You dig deeper into the bedrock, breach a sealed metal vault, and secure a fully charged laser rifle.
It saves your lives against a terrifying subterranean horror that was immune to your steel axes.
You haul this miraculous device back to the surface. But think about the broader geopolitical implications of that action. What happens to the economy, the military doctrine, and the balance of power in your medieval fantasy kingdom when you introduce a weapon of mass destruction and the local, highly ambitious wizard in the capital city decides they want to purchase it from you so they can reverse engineer the power cells?
The technological arms race that would trigger, that is a campaign-defining pivot right there. Suddenly, you aren't just dungeon crawlers hauling gold out of a hole, you are the people who brought the nuclear codes to a sword fight.
The political fallout would be massive.
Well, that is all the time we have for today's exploration. I want to thank you all for joining us on this deep dive. Take these tools, curate your world, and surprise your tables. Remember to keep your torches lit, watch out for the rusty clack of failing pressure plates, and tune in next time as we continue our journey further into the Megadungeon.